Hi YouTube people, welcome to another monthly reading wrap up. I am so late with this video because I got so caught up in reading two really good books that I can't even talk about in this video. But better late than never. Anyways, I read 10 books in February. I read them all on my iPad, and I also have my notes here because I got some things that I need to say. Okay, the first book I read is Hawk. It's about this. Wait, let me start from the very beginning. Nicole is in a relationship with her boyfriend at the time, Patrick, and she's unhappy. He's controlling, he doesn't get her, and then all of a sudden, they have a new roommate. It's this guy named Hawk who just got out of jail. At first, Nicole is not with it. She's a little judgmental towards him, but then their relationship becomes better, and then an affair happens between them. And it sounds bad, but it's not really bad because the boyfriend is horrible, and you kind of be like, yeah, he kind of deserved to get cheated on because of what he did. So the tropes are bad boy, good girl, cheating, forced proximity, roommates, all that jazz. I really like this book. It wasn't the best written, but it was really good. I like the vibes of the book. It was a little predictable. I kind of figured out, the overall thing, what was happening, pretty early on. Hawk, he got his happy ending. I was so happy for that. Her boyfriend and his family were horrible people. Wished them the worst. I don't feel bad about the cheating. What else? I gave this book 3.5 stars too. Okay, and so the next book I read is Marriage for One. In that book, okay, I have two favorite books for the month of February, and that's one of them. Marriage for One. It's about Jack and Rose, strangers who got married. Okay, so Jack's a lawyer, and he was helping her deal with her inheritance because her uncle had died and left the building, but she couldn't get it unless she was married. So he helped her out. They got married. They're living together, and it's a slow burn romance. So their romance is gradually building. It was a fake marriage, and he kind of had ulterior motives for marrying her, but not in a bad way. It was still really good on his part, and the tropes were fake marriage, marriage for convenience, and grumpy sunshine. She was the sunshine, he was grumpy. I just really like the book. I love slow burn romances because I don't know, I just love slow burn romances. And I like the chemistry between the two characters. I enjoyed the plot for the most part. I liked how their relationship developed over time. It wasn't rushed. So I gave that 4 stars. The next book I read was The Final Offer, and it's the third book in that series, the Dreamland Billionaire series. It's about the third brother, Cal, and his love interest, Lana. Cal had to go back to this small town where... Oh my gosh. Do you hear my dog barking? Cal had to go back to a small town to complete his task to collect their inheritance, which is billions of dollars. And his task is to sell the house, but he doesn't know that Lana is living there with her daughter. So yeah, he had to go back to that town where a lot of stuff went down between them two. The tropes are billionaire, second chance romance, childhood friends to lovers to strangers to lovers again, single mom romance, all that jazz. I have a rant for this book. Let's get into it. One, it was long for no reason. It was 600 pages when it shouldn't have been no more than 300 pages. It was boring. I did not like Lana. I thought Lana was boring. I think Lana is the worst character out of all of the series. I dislike her more than I dislike the girl in the first book of the series, Zara. I didn't like the way she treated Cal and his addiction, even though she claimed she wanted to help him. She's emotionally abusive towards him. I also didn't like how she didn't straight up tell him that the kid wasn't his, because at first he was thinking that was his kid, and she was like playing around with it, not really like letting him know straight up. Didn't like that. I also didn't like the back and forth between them. Are they together? Are they not? Is she really gonna be like helpful towards his addiction? All of that jazz. Didn't like that. I didn't like how the small town treated him, because they like all took her side, which is understandable, but they still were like treating him bad even though he is a struggling addict. Like, it was this one part, he went to a mechanic to get a car looked at, and they was like, nope, we don't got no appointments, but it was her car. And then once they realized it was her car, they was like, oh yeah, we could get it right now, we could get it taken care of. Like, really? I hated that. I hated that small town. And I low-key didn't even want them together. Like, she made me so mad reading that book. I was over it. But I have a problem where I have to continue reading the books. I cannot not finish a book. So 3 stars for that book. I like the second book of that series, The Fine Print. That's my favorite book of that series. Okay, the next book I read is called Change My Game, and that's about Paige and Jace. I love that name, Jace, by the way. The tropes are second chance romance, college romance, and best friends to lovers to strangers to lovers again, stuff like that. Jace and Paige, they were together-ish in high school, but then she like took off to college, didn't really like explain. She just took off. Didn't explain anything to him. And now she's back because her dad got sick. And then she runs into him and their other friend. And the other friend's like, you need to help him, because apparently he like went through a lot of stuff that he doesn't talk about. So she like reaches out to help him. And he pushes her away at first because he's still like hurt over the fact that she left without saying anything. But then he's like still longing for her at the same time. So they rekindle that romance by also dealing with her dad's stuff, and then also his trauma that he's going through, which is a lot, by the way. And he's also struggling with addiction because of the stuff he went through. It was really good. I enjoyed the plot. I liked both of the characters. It was emotional, and Paige is a strong character. I love her. And Jace's secret surprised me. Like, the plot twist, I was like, really? Like, I wasn't expecting it. It wasn't predictable at all. I read it out of order. I was supposed to read, like, another book before I read this book. But I can't wait to read the next book based on, like, the final 2 pages of this book. It was good. 4 stars. The next book I read, I'm going to talk about 2 books because it's, like, the first book and then the second book. But I also got to read the 3rd book. I didn't read that yet. But the first 2 books are about this couple, Eva and Salvi. It's called The Blue-Eyed Devil. That's the first book. And the second book is called The Fallen Angel. And it's a Lucifer and Eve myth retelling. Okay, the tropes are dark romance and mafia romance. And this book is a lot. Like, he's the devil for real. Okay, so Eva meets Salvi. And he's the Don, one of the head rulers of the 5 families, stuff like that. She meets him at a casino where her boyfriend at the time, he like betted her. So like she belonged to the casino because the boyfriend lost the bet. But he lets her go, and that's how they meet. And then she ends up becoming his lawyer because he's fighting a case. He's low-key a stalker, but this is all part of his plan because of like what ends up happening. And he is really possessive and obsessive over her. But then he also does something that completely destroys her. He makes a deal with her brother, and they ended up being arranged for marriage, stuff like that. And so they're together leading up to the wedding. They do the deed, even though she's like, she wanted to wait for marriage, but she loves him, stuff like that. So like she's slowly like falling into his little trap. The bomb dropped like on their wedding day, and they didn't end up getting married. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that to her. Like, he did some messed up stuff to her. I was shocked. Like, reading that part, I was like, oh shit, I can't believe it. But then he's like the devil, so yeah. I thought it was a really good Eve and Lucifer retelling, and because she was so sweet and good, pure-hearted and innocent, and then he was just the devil, all sexy and intense. Not that the devil's sexy, but the character was sexy and intense and all that stuff. Like, I feel so bad for her. The second book, The Fallen Angel, picks up like a day or two after the events of the first book, so like after the wedding, and she's so hurt. Poor her. It's even more triggering and dark, a lot more crazy stuff, and she's looking for revenge, and she got her revenge a little bit, but she also got hurt again, like because of the revenge. My girl couldn't win. She did end up hurting him. Like, he did something that he swore he would never do. He did hurt her again, but in a different way than in the first book. And I honestly didn't know if he was ever going to redeem himself. I was like, there's no way he could redeem himself after this. But he did. It got really better towards the end of the second book. He had a lot of growth in that second book, and I was happy for him, and they did get their happy ending. Because you could tell that he loved her, even though, like, of the stuff he did in the first and second book. He did that stuff because he felt like he had to get revenge. But not on her, but on the people, like, surrounding her. So, I was happy with that ending, even though they were toxic together. But that just goes to show you that I love toxic couples. So, I'm going to give the first book 3.5 stars and the second book 3 stars. And I got to read the third book. It's about his brother. Okay, the next book I read is crazy because it's a novella. It's called Caught by the Convicts, and it's like 100 pages or less, give or take. So it's about Wendy and these two convicts. She's visiting her dad in jail, and then all of a sudden a jailbreak happens, and then she's in a jail cell with the two convicts, and then some stuff goes down, and then she's like set free by the guards, but then the two convicts escape to like track her down and save her from her dad, who's like out to get her, and some more stuff goes down. This book was a lot. It was a lot for it to be so short, and it was so unrealistic too, but it was still funny. They ended up being like in a throuple relationship. So, let me give that 2.5 stars. Like, it was hot, it was smutty, but it was just so unrealistic. But I like the vibes. Okay, the next book I read is called Part of Your World. And this is the second favorite book I read this month. Yeah. This might be the first, and the last book I said was my favorite, the second. But Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I love all her books. Like, I haven't read a bad book by her yet. It's about this couple, what's her name? Alexis and Daniel. The tropes are age gap and small town romance. Alexis is driving in a small town, like trying to get back to her town when her car breaks down, and then Daniel helps her get her car like sorted out. But then she goes to a bar where the whole small town is in, including Daniel. And then they end up going home together and doing a deed. And then she sneaks off like a thief in the night. Later on, she ends up calling the bar again to like connect back with him. And then their little casual relationship continued on. She wanted a casual, he wanted more. But she was like getting out of this bad romance. And she knew like her family wouldn't ever like accept him. She was a doctor from like a long line of doctors, like everyone was a doctor in her family, and then he was a mayor of this small town, a carpenter, and a bed and breakfast owner, something like that. And he was 10 years younger than her as well, so that's hot. My rant for this book is I hated her parents, hated her ex, I hated her friends. They were all snobby except for like one. And then her ex had cheated on her, and her parents were still hanging out with him even though he cheated on her and he was emotionally abusive to her. And they were trying to force them to get back together, like, oh, y'all need to go to therapy. Like, what? This is not your relationship. This is her relationship. Her dad was so horrible. And the dad was horrible towards her. He emotionally abused her too. And he didn't like the fact that she was like an ER doctor. He wanted her to, I guess, pick another specialty, something more prestigious, something like that. I don't know. But I did enjoy the book. Their worlds were like keeping them apart, more so on her end, because he was like fine with it. And she was annoying to me through the book until she finally stood up for herself, because that's what I wanted. I was like, girl, you need to stand up for yourself. But she finally did, and they got the happy ending. It was so cute. Okay, the next book I read is called Pen Pal, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a little confused reading the book, and I'm so confused now that I'm finished. The tropes were, I guess, it's either thriller or mystery romance, whatever. But I don't want to say too much without giving away, but I feel like I have to spoil this book because it is a little confusing. Kayla is dealing with the death of her husband, and she hires this guy Aiden to like help her with something that happened with her house. And she's also receiving anonymous letters from this guy named Dante. And her house is haunted, or so she thinks. So you got the haunted house, the mysterious letters from Dante, and then you got Aiden. She's dealing with their relationship. So that's like the story. But that's not all of the story because I'm spoiling this book. I don't care. Her husband's not dead. And her house is not haunted, and Aiden and Dante, they're the same. She's actually dead. Her and Aiden is dead. Her husband had schizophrenia, and he killed them. So they're actually ghosts that are in that town, and yeah, it was a lot. The husband killed them. They realized they were ghosts. Well, Aiden knew he was a ghost, but she didn't know. He was like trying to help her figure out that she was a ghost. Like, she really thought she was alive this whole time. The plot was interesting and it had a lot of potential to be amazing, but it could have been explained better because I was confused. I was really confused. Like, there's this part where they went on this date with Aiden's friends. So I'm like, is this real? Or is this like the past? I was so confused. It was hard to tell like the back and forth of what was real and what wasn't, like when she was murdered, like before they were murdered, like that part, or like in the afterlife where they're ghosts. It was like hard to differentiate the two. So yeah, 3 stars because I was confused. It could have been better. Okay, and then the last book I read is called The Sinner. And again, I keep reading books out of order. I was supposed to read another book before this book, but it's fine. I gotta go back to it. The tropes were college romance, dark romance, secret society, best friend's brother. It's about Easton, and his nickname is Sin, and then Ellie, whose real name is Elliton. Trigger warning on this book because it was a lot. It was an intense, emotional story, and my girl Ellie, she went through a lot, but she got her happy ending. Okay, so they're both college students. They're both a part of the secret society world. He's in a secret society, and she knows about it because her, like, dad was in it, something like that. But she's not in it. He wants to be with her, but he can't fully be with her because, like I said, she's not in it, and they, like, arrange for him to marry someone else. And the real reason why he can't be with her is because 2 creepy old guys, like they want her for themselves. She went through a lot, and I have a rant for this book because, ooh, I hated so many things about this book. Even though it's a good book, I hated so many things. Let's see. The things she went through was horrible, and the stuff her mother said to her was horrible. I wanted to kill the mother myself. Like, how as a mother do you let what happened to your daughter happen, and then you blame your daughter? Like, that's not your daughter's fault. That is your husband, her stepfather's fault. He groomed her. Like, what is wrong with you? Horrible mother. Wanted to choke her. I hate when books slut shame characters, because especially when they've been abused and groomed. Like, she was groomed at a young age, and like, she wasn't even a slut. She was not sleeping with a lot of people. She slept with 2 people willingly, and she was like abused by either 2 or 3 people, something like that. So like, how is that a slut? Like, she's just a girl who enjoyed sex. Ooh, and it was a lot of sex. No complaints on that part though. No complaints. On the good parts of the sex, not the bad parts where she was like abused. I'm talking about the relationship between her and Sin. But Sin, he is protective and obsessive over Ellie. He takes care of her, and he did what he needed to do to all the people who hurt Ellie. The last thing I put about him, I was like, he's actually a funny character, because there's this one scene where he tells her he bought them a house and to sign the lease papers, but he didn't buy a house. It was a marriage certificate, and then like the way he went around like telling her was so funny, because something had happened and he was like, that's my wife, like saying it to people, and then he ended up telling her, you're my wife, you're mine, no one else. I thought that was cute and funny that he like got her to marry him that way. Okay, I gave this 3.5 stars. It would have been 4 had they not slut shamed her when she wasn't a slut. Like, we don't do that. But yeah, really good book, really good storyline. It was just a lot of triggering trauma throughout, but it was still really good. Okay, and that's it. That's the last book I read. Sorry for all the rambling if I rambled too much. And see you for the next video, I guess. Bye.